Hello, everybody. My name is Thomas Parker, and I'm going to be presenting a slideshow about the article I read by Marcia Eaton titled Integrating the Aesthetic and the Moral. All right. So, first, we're going to go over just the three things I'm going to cover in the slideshow. First, is going to be the three examples used to illustrate a mistake in believing the general separability of the aesthetic and the moral. The second, we'll go briefly over the overridingness debate, and then the third will be the meaningful life. The main conclusion made by Eden that I found from this entire article was that sources of value, including the moral and the aesthetic, may sometimes be separable, but they are always connected in the sense that they both serve as sources for an overall meaningful life. The three examples used in this article, the first one is I believe it's pronounced Gauguin. It's about a man who deserted his family in order to travel to Tahiti to devote himself to a kind of painting that he believed he could only succeed at in Tahiti. The second is called The Goldfish. It's about a Canadian artist who creates bright and extremely interesting canvases by dipping goldfish in primary colors of paint and placing them on a canvas in which they slowly flap around as they die, and that flapping creates beautiful art. The third is called the Goody Two Shoes example, and that's someone who is shallow, mindlessly follows moral rules just for the sake of following them. They don't have any fun. They seek approval from authority figures, and they're self-righteous. I think most people have some type of idea of what a Goody Two Shoes is. This leads us to the overridingness debate, and essentially those three examples tie into this debate itself. The main idea of the debate itself is a view that moral considerations must be the most important sort of considerations for anyone that cares about morality. The Gauguin example is one of the most common within this debate. So is the goldfish. They're essentially examples that illustrate the moral dilemma in context to the aesthetic dilemmas of things. So, for Gauguin, him leaving his family is a moral dilemma, but the aesthetic consideration is that he wants to become a famous artist or pursue great art in the form that he desires. Those examples are used in the article to show that, and at least Eaton uses them to show that, those two considerations, moral and aesthetic, are not entirely separate. Eden also goes to say that the overridingness debate adds fuel to the separatist view of morality and aesthetics, which is basically the view that both morality and aesthetics themselves are separate and they do not mix together. Eaton's idea of the meaningful life. Eaton presents four possibilities where both ethical and aesthetic considerations, along with all other kinds of considerations, can claim relevance. I'm going to be talking about number 4, which considerations regarding the meaning of life itself. Eaton regards number 4 to be on a higher, more complex level than the first 3, and that's essentially because the first 3 deal with individual decisions or small groups of decisions, where number 4 deals with decisions that are part of what you believe to be meaningful for your entire life. Meaning of life questions, like I said, deal with the matters that permeate one's life, not just individual decisions. Questions about the meaningfulness of life are not immediate. They will require choices made based upon an overall network or pattern of choices and the adherence to the principles or consequences that these decisions involve. And that's essentially saying, that when you're asking about what is meaningful in someone's life, you basically can't, for the most part, won't be able to judge that based off an individual decision that person makes or an individual consideration that person makes. To know the meaningfulness of their life, you need to know much deeper parts of a person's life and what they like and what they're about and what they believe in. Larger patterns of that are what often determine individual decisions. Larger patterns based on what you believe the meaning of your life have importance on the individual decisions you make on an everyday basis. Eden sees that meaningful life can take many shapes and require different levels of moral, aesthetic, and other types of considerations. She's basically making a point saying that the meaningfulness of your life is not separated distinctly between moral, aesthetic, and all other considerations. It's actually an aggregation of all of those together, where some take precedent over others at certain times and vice versa. She also uses, I think it's important to note, the idea of pattern virtues. And that's what we admire in others' lives, even when they are breaking rules we hold dear. And that's where the Gawain and the goldfish come into effect, where some people might think that it is admirable for Gawain to just up and leave everything in his life to pursue his passion for painting. Where in our own world, we wouldn't do that because we value our family stronger than he does. But that value goes down to the meaning of life. Again, which what Eaton brings up is saying that meaningfulness to someone's life is truly what dictates how morality, aesthetics, and all other types of considerations are viewed. There's no set form that blankets across every life that this is what is morally superior, this is what's aesthetically superior. All of these things are based on what is meaningful to an individual's life. And I think that's the whole point of this article Eaton is trying to bring about, is that all of these considerations, these patterns are connected to considerations about the meaning of life generally. The meaning of life, according to Eaton, is one in which all types of considerations play a role together. She's basically saying that there is no distinct separation between all these considerations, and in fact, they all play a part together to make someone's life meaningful in the context of what they want it to be when they are talking about meaning.